Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now.
Morning everyone and welcome. I said I would only come back on if the West Indies lost to PNG. That very nearly happened. And here I am anyway, because what a remarkable game of cricket that we watched there. Guyana is one of those wickets, right, where you see it and you can understand how tough it is, but you don't quite always fully compute it. And you watch the West Indian batters and they were thinking to themselves, yeah, we know it's tough here. We know the ball doesn't bounce much, but eventually we're just going to get it right. And we're going to get it right. We're going to get it right. And it just never happened. And Papua New Guinea are not a particularly good bowling team, but they have a lot of bowling options, a lot of which are decent enough spinners. Not all of them are frontliners. Some of them sort of sway between being frontliners and reserves at various times when you're watching them and everything else. But they put the ball roughly in the right area. Everyone fields really hard. I don't know if you saw Hiri Hiri out on the boundary. It's a perfect example of Papua New Guinea cricket. He fumbles a ball and he is furious at himself because all they do more fielding practice than any other cricket team I've ever covered in my life. They are so thorough with that. And you watch the angles when they're throwing the ball in the stumps. Someone is always backing up. There's always someone there. They're just a delightful team to watch. And to see them almost upset the hosts, who have come in from what, 33-1 to 6-1, and we will get to that later because I still don't fully understand that. But to see them almost upset them with their brand of cricket, of chipping away, of just getting enough runs, of everyone playing a role, people diving, people backing up. There was a moment when the ball went out to the boundary and it was fielded by, I think it was short third. And he flicked it back, and I thought, there's a lot of games where then that happens. He then has to come back and pick it. But I knew that wasn't going to be the case for Papua New Guinea, because I knew that if he ran to the boundary, someone else would be sprinting to that same boundary to support him. That's the way they play cricket. And let's just quickly go through this. Obviously, we'll do a proper scoreboard on this tomorrow, but I could not record in this game. It was too incredible. So they were 8 for 2, 8 for 7 actually. And they look, sorry, I'll get that right. 7 for 2. Eventually I'll get this scorecard right. And at that stage, this game looked completely done. They couldn't play Akil Hassan, who bowled a beautiful ball. And he swung one that also seemed back in. You know, that ball that he bowls that sometimes does more than it should. Andre Russell bowled a really good early over as well. But there was something always a bit off with what the West Indies were doing. And if you look at the fact that when Hiri Hiri went out, and he never looked like he was going to make a single run, but that's when Charles Amini came in. And Charles Amini I really like him as a cricketer. He's really professional. He's good at moving the field around. He's always trying to move the game forward. He's always thinking about what he should be doing next. And he came in and he swept it straight away. And I was like, well, that's really clever cricket. That's what Papua New Guinea were doing. And Sese Bal, who we'll talk about in a minute. But everyone's going to focus on West Indies batting in this. Go back and have a look at the bowling. So many times, what they needed to do was simply bring Andre Russell back on to bowl very, very fast. They had 6 bowlers in this game, and they did not need to keep bowling Roston Chase. Roston Chase is a defensive bowler. That's absolutely fine. What you needed in this game was for Andre Russell and Gutkesh Modi to bowl throughout the middle, looking for wickets to end this game quickly. And I had one friend send me a message going, yeah, but you know, maybe they just want to get a few more runs so it's easier to chase. I'm like, it's Guyana. It's also the first game of the tournament. Worry about that later. Don't worry about that now. Although I hope no team would ever think about it that way. But you go through the bowling changes of I'm just trying to find them all here. You go through the bowling changes. So the 9th over, Gudakesh Modi gets a wicket. And so the 10th over, it makes the most sense for them to attack with one of their seamers again, or even bowl Akil Hassan for another over. And instead, they bring on Roston Chase. Okay. Gudakesh Modi bowls the following over, and then Romario Shepherd comes on. Why? What is the thought process there? How did they come about this? From that point forward, then Modi gets hit for one over, and they take him off. Again, you want them attacking your most attacking spinner. Then Alzarri Joseph came on for the 14th over. It was all over the place. And then Andre Russell finally comes on for the 15th over, and he goes for 4 runs and takes a wicket. And the next over, I'm thinking, great, this is it. Go for the kill. Maybe bring Moti back on. Maybe go with Joseph or Romario Shepherd. Bowl short, bowl at the toes, whatever. They're, 96 for 5. He bowls Roston Chase again. It's like they didn't want to bowl them out. The following over, they got away with one when Alzarri Joseph went through, says he about, and we will go through him in a moment. But they just let it go on. And at the end, so many runs were hit off them. And this has been one of my big concerns. Can they actually stop runs at the end of games? They couldn't do it against Papua New Guinea's tail in Guyana. But they looked like they were cruising all the way through and just thinking to themselves, oh, it doesn't really matter. Let's get some overs into Roston Chase. No, win the game. Win the game. It was such a bizarre bowling effort. But I do want to talk about, as I said, I love the way he went about this. I thought him and Charles Amini and Doriga at the end, who I don't know if I've seen Doriga make runs all that much before, but they sort of changed the momentum just by looking for runs and looking for singles. And I thought Ceci did really, really well. He's never going to be a power hitter. He sort of anchored that, and on this kind of wicket, it probably suits him a little bit more. But they all did well. Chad Soper coming down the end. Batted absolutely horrendously. He batted like he'd never seen a cricket bat before, and yet they still managed to eke out as many runs as possible. I reckon I counted 4 balls that the West Indies bowled on the hip of a tail ender in the last 3 overs. What's that ball? What's your thought process there? Are you trying to bowl at the chest, short, at their throat, at their nipples, wherever, and you've just got it really wrong? Are you trying to bowl slow balls into the pitch and they're jagging a little bit more? I don't know. I just don't understand why they were doing that. It's such a bizarre thing. And we will focus on the West Indies batting because that was the thing that almost cost them the game at the end. They should have been chasing 115. This should never have been a game, right? I have no problem with Cesar Bell batting well in the middle. And I have no problem with Amini and then Doriga doing okay. But once you got Hiri out, you had to start looking for wickets to try and mop this up. It was such a limp performance by the West Indies. But great from, I suppose Doriga gets a lot of the credit there. But even from someone like Chad Soper, who, as I said, didn't even look like he was holding the bat correctly at times, and still managed to find runs. And in the end, West Indies didn't bowl out Andre Russell, they didn't bowl out Akil Hassan, and they didn't bowl out Gudakesh Modi. But they did bowl out Roston Chase. It was just bizarre. The whole thing was bizarre. I didn't quite get it. Then they come out to bat. Obviously, Johnson Charles gets a good ball from now. And remember, this is probably the major mistake, other than that Hiri fielding and the start by Papua New Guinea. The major mistake that they made in this game was the run-out, the non-referral of the LBW off now, which was Nicholas Puran. Nicholas Puran played a baffling innings where he just blocked out dot after dot after dot, and then suddenly got 1 over of off spin and was just like, I'm going to hit every single ball here for 4. And I thought, okay, great. Again, this is where they break the game over and they start to go. It just never happened, did it? Every now and again, it looked like they were going to do that. And you have a look at, Carrico, who's basically left arm finger spinner who spins it a little bit but slides it through. That's all he was trying to do. And Nicholas Puran managed to hole out. Brandon King, who, when he went out, the commentators said, well batted, for his 34. And I'm like, I still don't know now if that was a good innings or not. It was absolutely, bizarre, but a really, really good ball, which he wanted to hit into the stands. Then you had the period where I thought Rodman Powell was just going to get them quite easily to victory, right? And suddenly he was out for another one. And then Shafane Rutherford came out and lasted 7 balls for 2 runs. Literally the worst innings that you could have on that deck. And it was left to Roston Chase, who batted really well from this period, and Andre Russell. And just to go through some of the bowlers here, they never went back to now, Papua New Guinea. Once they realized that the wicket was spinning for them, they let those guys back. There was probably one over where they risked one and they went with Chad Soper. And I thought there was a very big chance of runs and wickets in that over, and it's exactly what ended up happening, which was a combination of both. But you look at everyone else. Carrico, 4 overs, 1 for 17. Asad Vala, and I've seen Asad Vala bowl brilliantly so many times before. 4 overs, 1 maiden, 2 for 28. And Charles Amini, who, again, every time I've seen him at World Cups, the ball doesn't come out of his hand perfectly. That first over was a bit ropey, but he still goes for 2 overs for 14 to add more pressure to everything else. They did so well to take this down, and it really took probably, I'm trying to think of who the bowler was, but it was probably that one drag down ball to Andre Russell that really cost them. It was Carrico. So at the end of that spell, having bowled so well, he just drags one down to Andre Russell, who smashes it out of the park. And that's kind of it. That next over, I thought Roston Chase batted really, really well against Asad Vala, who no one had really hit up until that point. And then, of course, they finished it off at the end when the opening bowler came back. But 2 things I really want to focus on. I didn't go in massively strong, but I did think that starting this tournament in USA and Canada and West Indies and Papua New Guinea, just from a PR perspective, from trying to start the World Cup with a bit of a boom. And I think we do this too often in cricket. We don't really put enough precedence on that first game. And how many if you want to turn the casual fans on, that's what you need to do. I still think I'm generally right with that. Genuinely? I'm partially right with that theory. But it doesn't matter, because what we saw in the first game was an incredible turnaround. And then the home team smacking 6s everywhere. And also both teams putting on a really good show of cricket when we had 2 associates starting a World Cup. It was a fantastic opening game. This, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say this was a fantastic game of cricket. This was a game of cricket. But again, Papua New Guinea were completely out of this game. I thought that their best period of the game, looking at Varun's stats, and I'm sure we might talk about that tomorrow, is usually batting in the power play. They got themselves into a terrible situation because they couldn't play Akil Hassan correctly. They got themselves behind the game. Then they really didn't start batting well until they were 4 wickets down. And then they brought themselves back. They showed their class. If they had finished with, that total, 136, and West Indies had chased it down 16 or 17 overs in, I still would have said they put on a good effort. They actually managed to put some pressure back on the West Indies and do some good things there. The fact that they took that very small total, even by Guyana standards, they took that very small total and they rinsed it for as much tension as possible, to a point where, the bookies, even when the West Indies were falling behind, you looked at Betfair Exchange and the bookies and everywhere else, they never really got more than about 110. You put £100 on, you get 110 pounds back. Like, basically not worth betting at any stage. Even when they were losing, that never really, really happened. And yet, right at the end, the West Indies actually got to 170, which shows you it wasn't quite an equal game, but it wasn't far off it. And there was a point when they were I think after Shafane Rutherford had gone out. Let's have a look here. When was Shafane out? Was he out in the 14th? No, that was Rovman, wasn't it? I've lost an over here somewhere. Here it is. In the 16th over, at that stage, it was, 40 required from 24. With Andre Russell coming out to bat, fine. But no one watching that game was thinking the West Indies were going to do it as comfortably as they did. All day when they tried to hit a boundary, they'd basically gone out. They'd never put any pressure back on Papua New Guinea. They'd cashed in on a few bad balls, but that's the thing about playing a team like Papua New Guinea. They don't give you many wickets when you're bowling. They're a handy batting side. They're not a great batting side. And they're not a very good bowling side, but they make you hit from decent deliveries. So you do have to take risks against them. And then you're doing it against an outstanding fielding unit, right? They all field together and are very, very sharp. It was just brilliant. It's been a brilliant opening to this World Cup. And I was not expecting this at all. Well done to Papua New Guinea. I'm a huge fan of their cricket. You know, if you go back and watch the last T20 World Cup that they were in, and I was talking about them back then, I really like the way they go about their cricket. They don't have individual stars in the same way as other teams, outside of probably, I suppose, the opening bat is one guy that you would say is probably, you know, Tony Ura. Is someone who maybe can do stuff like that, but they really do win a lot of games by just a lot of different players chipping in, very much similar to someone like Namibia. And it's fascinating to watch because they almost play in a different way because they have to. This sort of socialist cricket, you know, where everyone does their job as best as they can and you hope that it knits together into something quite special. There's many other associate teams more individually talented than them, but those teams quite often have struggles getting away from Papua New Guinea because of how disciplined they can be with their cricket, and we saw that again today. But the other side of this, and let's see if I can bring up the odds at the moment. Well, T20. Because I think this is right. West Indies were like 33-1, and then they played against. No, that's what warm-up games. I want the winner of the tournament. T20 World Cup. Yeah, and then they played against South Africa, and suddenly things changed massively, and they went from whatever it was, 16-1, 33-1, and they came all the way into 7-1. In fact, you can even get them now at 5-1. That game hasn't changed anything. But if you listen to the show before this, or the one before that, or whichever one we've done, I just not feeling them. Individual players I don't have an issue with. Selections, I'm not 100% sure. Bowling decisions by Robin Powell, I don't think it's particularly good. Their death bowling, I don't like a lot. I'm such a big fan of Gurukesh Modi. Although he didn't bowl particularly well today. He was actually out bowled by their PNG spinners today. But I'm such a big fan of him that I can almost allow it on the fact that I could see a situation where he might get 1 or 2 wickets a game if we keep seeing surfaces that help him. And he's not going to get hit a lot. And Akil Hassan, again, I'm a big fan of him. So there are parts to their game that I really like. But I do think they are not at the level of some of I mean, they are currently, let's have a look. They're currently basically the same odds as the West Indies, and as England, and they're shorter than South Africa. Now I know part of that is because they've won a game, and so you know they get a little bit of a bonus there. I'm sure the USA shortened into 750-1 or 500-1, depending on where you put your money. So I understand that because it means that you're a little bit closer to qualifying, which means you're more likely. But it would be hard to watch West Indies today and be like, that is a team that should be 6-1 or 5-1 to win the World Cup. They did not look like that at all. That was a fascinating, turgid arm wrestling game. I loved every minute of it. It's a shame that PNG didn't get over the line. I mean, I don't know what they would have done to the tournament if the West Indies would have lost to PNG in the first game. So maybe from a tournament standpoint, that was better. But brilliant PNG. PNG, Canada, and USA so far, just brilliant cricket. They're playing that. All three of those sides at times have played their best cricket and have put themselves in a situation to really impress people, and they've done it. So I could not be more excited for the start of this World Cup. And maybe coming out of the IPL and everything else, I don't think I was like flying. And right at the moment, I do feel a little bit like I'm flying. Like we were planning on having 1 show a day. I think I've done 3 shows today. Anyway, we'll have a quick break. I'll see if there's anything in the comments. I'm Jared Kimber, and this is the score. Well, it's not actually the scoreboard. It's just Jared Kimber, really, on Good Areas.
Occasionally, I also talk about behind-the-scenes stuff. Huge thanks to everyone who has supported us on Patreon and helped us build this channel.
Join our Patreon community and unlock exclusive benefits. Enjoy AMAs, live calls with me, and connect with fellow cricket enthusiasts on Discord. Express your cricket fandom with Bodyline t-shirts. Discover their extensive range of player-inspired tees, featuring cricket legends such as Murali, Warne, and Wazim. With team-themed designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds, they've got you covered no matter what your interest in cricket is.
All right. Just seeing if there's anything else here. All right. Just a couple of questions here, but there's some good ones. Aman says, how big of an advantage to India knowing that they're playing a semi-final in that ground? No other team picked so many frontline spinners. I think for the West Indies anyway, they were probably going to do that. Also, you look at their bowling lineup and they have, two genuine all-rounders in their spinners. I would have thought that most squads, they probably are going to have more spinners than other teams anyway because of the Akshar Patel, Ravi Jadeja part of it, but it's huge, right? Like it really is. Having said that, I kind of think, firstly, they have to make the semi-final, right? And secondly, we just saw conditions that were certainly made to help them in the ODI World Cup, and they didn't win. It does feel that there is a real movement towards helping them win a tournament. I wonder how much of it is out of, ICC will make more money, and how much of it is out of, these guys have to win eventually, right? But yeah, I think it is an advantage. But I think those four, if you're going to the West Indies for a bunch of games, and you've got two genuine all-rounder spinners, I think that it was always going to be the case. And even if they had three spinners rather than the four, I still think they might have played all three in Guyana had they not known that game was coming up, if that makes sense. They're not going to pick all four, I don't think, is I suppose what I'm trying to say with that. I'd be shocked. It seems to still do really good at Guyana. I'm just trying to have a look here. Andre Russell got 2 for 19. Romario Shepherd 1 for 23. And Nao, was 1 for 9 off 2. I think we think about Guyana as a spin wicket. It's actually kind of more of what's the best way of putting it? It's almost like it really helps accurate bowlers. That's the way I look at that pitch, rather than just a wicket that helps spinners. So I think there are other wickets in the world that are actually way better for spinners than Guyana. But Guyana it helps all accurate bowlers. If you can put the ball in the right area, it's just hard to whack it. Aditya says, Azari Joseph, 2 for 34. He's genuinely fast. I was expecting him to rattle the batters at least a little bit. West Indies look very soft the entire game. Yeah. Aditya, I'm on your side here. I was sitting there with my son, and he really got into this game. He was believing in Papua New Guinea way before. Although, to be fair, at the change of innings, I did back them at 55-1. So, I was kind of in it as well. But he was really into it, and I kept saying, but they're just going to bowl this ball, and then they're going to bowl this ball. And Joseph just never really did it. They were passive, and look, it's fine. It's early in the tournament and everything else. It hasn't cost them, so they've got away with it. But they looked passive. And Alzari Joseph, it's not the first time I've watched him and just thought, what's your plan here? What are you actually trying to do? Udit says, where do you see the USA in 10 years, I assume he means, with their resources, if the interest takes off here and the local talent pool comes through? So I've spent a lot of time, obviously, I did a little bit of work with Major League Cricket last year, helping them with their draft process. I might be working with them again. I'm not sure, actually. I need to talk to them and see what the deal is with all that. But I might be doing some more work with them in the future, and certainly, I've been roughly involved with USA Cricket. What they all say, and have been saying for a long time, really, is that underage talent has never been the issue in the USA. They actually think they have really good underage talent coming through, but those kids at 18, 19, 20 pick other sports because they go to college, and if they're good athletes, they can pick up scholarships in other sports. And there isn't a clear pathway into the USA men's cricket team. That's, I think, the big difference. If they can work out how to get cricket into college sports so that there is scholarships available, and that could change men's and women's cricket in America so quickly. That is, I think, would be my main aim, and it's not an easy one, and I know they're trying, but that's where I'd be going. But remember this, they are so badly administrated over there that it could all fall apart again for the 8th time. Udit says, how do the best batters in the world, after practicing for years, still have technical flaws, even after 100 plus tests? How do you not know how to block off spin or play an outswinger or lack game sense? Because cricket's really hard. So if you talk to bowlers, I've done this huge thing on wobble ball, which will come out this summer. I've been working on it for a long time. You talk to bowlers and you go, oh, you do this. And they basically go, Jared, I run in, I try and bowl pretty much as fast as I can at the top of off stump. Sometimes it's outside off stump. Sometimes it's top of middle. Occasionally, I go for bounces. Sometimes we go for reverse swing. Right? It's quite simple bowling. Right? Batting, there's so many different elements to it. The way the wicket works, the position of the game, what the ball is doing on that particular day. There's just a lot more things that you need to conquer at any stage. And you talk about something like, how do you not know how to play an outswinger? So I've talked to players for my book where they've talked about things like that. And they've said, yeah, so I worked out how to play an outswinger after years not being able to play an outswinger. And then I started struggling with in-swing. It never ends. Once you change your technique a little bit, it brings out about another thing. So what most of the best players in the world do, and we're talking about sort of sub-Lara, Ponting, Tendulkar here. But what most of the best players in the world do is just try and maximize what they do best. It's an unmasterable game because we play on grass, which is why it's so genius. Siddharth says, now how good would Papua New Guinea be if they actually had support from the ICC and more wealthier cricket nations? Well, I mean, everyone would be better. I would say this. We've just watched 3 really high quality associate cricket teams who are not like in the top 12 teams in the world, right? I mean, USA might be on their way there, but right at the moment are not. That comes from support from the ICC. Richard Doan, Bob Woolmer, those guys went out of their way to fix associate cricket at a time when they were supported by some people in the ICC. Siddharth, it wasn't enough. But the reason we have these teams at the moment is partly down to the ICC. And hopefully I'll try and get Richard Doan on our podcast at one stage to chat about this as well. But you're right. And the wealthier cricket nations, look, that one's probably, I would love for that to happen. I don't think that is going to happen in the future. But you're right. I think that's what needs to happen. But we are actually at a stage. We have never had this many good cricket teams before. And if you could take nothing else out of what you just watched, we have never had this many high quality men's and women's cricket teams ever in the history of our game. Right? What a time to be a cricket fan, because Papua New Guinea are exciting, and who knows what the USA can be. And you've got Canada, and you've got Uganda, and you've got Rwanda, and the Argentinian women's teams, and all these different teams popping up everywhere. It's really, really exciting. Boxbox says, what's the story behind most of the PNG cricketers being from one village? So there's a part, I'm not a massive expert on this, but I have talked to people like Charles Amini about it before. Essentially, there's one part of Papua New Guinea where cricket was really big. And it's, I think when we say it's a village, I think it's not like a village of like 40 people, right? Although, I think half the players are brothers, sisters, cousins with each other's. The men's and women's teams are either married to each other or brothers and sisters. There's lots of interaction between those, and there's obviously a couple of players from outside of that center as well. But yeah, I think it is, for whatever reason, an area where cricket is really, really big, and you watch them and they play like a family. They move like a family. They field like a family. Oh God, what was his name? I said it before. Hiri. He was furious, right? Like the guy who realized he'd turn up to the holiday house and forgot the cheese plate, right? That's where they are. And I think it's absolutely beautiful to watch a cricket team like this. We're really lucky to be able to see them. And I don't think they did themselves justice at the last World Cup they made. Was it UAE World Cup? Because I'd seen them play in the UAE beforehand, and I thought that they had the game that could at least do kind of what we saw in this game, where on trickier wickets they could, get to a subpar score and then use their fielding and their many bowling options to sort of put things together. I'm so glad that we've seen one game of them, because I don't know how big Papua New Guinea cricket is going to be. Canada and USA, Uganda and these other countries that are coming through, and who did I mention before? Rwanda and Thailand and Hong Kong and all. We know where they could go. I don't know where Papua New Guinea can go. And so maybe this is the last time we see them at a major event. A lot of those players are aging out, right? It might have just been that they had a golden generation, but isn't it brilliant that we got at least one chance to see them? Anyway, we'll be back again tomorrow. We won't be doing a show after Namibia Oman. That I can guarantee. I don't even know if I'll be awake for it. I probably will be awake for it, but I can definitely guarantee that. And we'll have another show tomorrow around 2 p.m. UK time. And then we'll try and have the scoreboard every day around there. So we'll have both of the games. We'll have this game that's just been played and the Namibia Oman game available for you on the scoreboard. But thank you to everyone for joining in this impromptu show. And we'll be back very, very soon again on the Good Areas live channel to talk more about this World Cup and, I don't know, probably other things, maybe live.
Support us on Patreon and help us keep making our content. Join for exclusive perks like the AMAs, the live calls, and to chat with me directly on Discord. You can also enjoy ad-free content, early podcasts, and access to my emailer. Step up your cricket style game with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their exclusive player-themed t-shirts, including favourites like Virat Kohli, Kane Williamson, and Ben Stokes. They also have team